This new scandal that's breaking of the BCCI, I think, is going to be yet another window into these networks, and if you're not clipping already on that scandal, you ought to be. This is the current Nugan Hand Bank, I think. Nugan Hand was formed in Australia in 1973 by Mr. Nugan and Mr. Hand, a CIA and Green Beret operative that had been with the Phoenix kill teams in Vietnam, worked and involved with William Colby. William Colby was tied to this bank, as well as numerous other military intelligence and Vietnam-era operatives. Its main purpose, and it was set up all around the world, was to launder the money that was carrying the opium out of the Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia at the end of the war into other places around the world. And it operated in much the same way before it folded and people died and disappeared, as the BCCI apparently is. This Bank of Credit and Commerce International, which Mr. Gates apparently made a joke about, calling it the Bank of Crooks and Criminals. He ought to know. And what economists just recently calls the BCCIA, which is probably the proper term for it. CIA wants us to believe that they just kept a hand in there so they could catch the really big fish. Sometime they'll look in the mirror and see who the fish are. But it involves a lot of people, 69 countries. The Jordanian army had accounts there. General Zia, fascist ruler there in Pakistan, involved the Pakistani and opium money, as well as guns for the Afghanistan rebels, and Miami drug laundering accounts, even involving Rajiv Gandhi, who was recently assassinated, Abu Nidal, the terrible terrorist that Oliver North is so afraid of. He built a fence around his house, he said, so that Abu Nidal wouldn't come in and get him. I call him Al Boogeyman. But Abu Nidal had 42 different accounts at BCCI, and tens of millions of dollars went through the bank. Of course, interestingly enough, so did the money for funding the Contras and Oliver North's operations, and it's not the first connection I've found between Abu Nidal's funding and Mr. North. If he wanted to have a mano with Abu Nidal, I think he would have invited him over for dinner. That fence is up there in case we figure out what he's doing. They had this, what they called a black network, 1,500 people involved. One of the agents surfaced recently. They call him Mustafa, and this is basically a strong-arm network for the bank. CIA and the DIA had accounts. They said they're just routine for their international operations. They drug laundered in Tampa. A credit line was extended, and $50,000 retainer was paid to Andrew Young in order to introduce the bank owners to third world leaders. And Young played, I believe, a very sinister role in the assassination of Martin Luther King years before, and also worked with CIA in Africa, carrying out their plans for corporatization of Africa. And more recently, he said he would like to have the Guatemalan police brought up to Atlanta, where he is in government, so that they could be trained by the Atlanta police. And he has also indicated that he'd like to become head of the CIA. Maybe that's who's behind Gates in the row. Even Perez de Cuellar, the UN head, was provided free plane flights by this bank. They apparently were trying to get influence wherever they could. President of Peru is indicated. Several other banks. Mrs. Bhutto's family, who took over from Zia in Pakistan, apparently lost $10 million in the London bank. Manuel Noriega and Saddam Hussein did their banking there. And the bank even gave $8 million to the Jimmy Carter Center in Atlanta as a philanthropic gift through one of their fronts. The banks under them include First American Bank shares in D.C., which compromises Clark Clifford and Robert Altman in the investigation, the Independence Bank in Mendocino, California, and First American Currency in Laguna Hills, and American Southern Insurance Corporation is owned by them. I guess if you see anything that says America or First in it, you better hold on to your money. And Centrust Savings in Florida, which was implicated in this laundering. And so you have this central area. Even Ben Banerjee, who's the Irangate arms dealer from India, apparently was using the bank. And the Medellin cartel, cocaine money, was being funneled through it. And people who were running arms to Hussein in Argentina through the Falklands were involved in the Pakistani branch, and the Islamic Jihad, which is supposedly holding the hostages, they had an account. Ferdinand Marcos had an account. Adnan Khashoggi had an account, another big CIA arms dealer. And they apparently handed all of this niceness off to, well, also somebody now has come out, Inam ul Haq, who apparently was setting up funding to transport nuclear arms technology to a lot of third world countries through this bank. And now 77% of the ownership is under this Sheikh Zayed, one of the oil emirates and richest people in the world, and he's sort of holding the bag, and they're waiting breathlessly to find out if he's just going to take the money and run or pay back some of the depositors. Even Adolfo Calero, the head of the Contra operations, was using this bank. And the governments have known about it for some time. The Mossad and other international intelligence agencies were working through it as well. The DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, had a slush fund for clandestine activities, but when the Justice Department was approached from time to time with these pieces of information, even about Noriega, they would not move on it. And now someone surfaced this Mr. Von Raab at the Customs Department who said he talked to Gates in 1986 about BCCI. And I noticed in a radio report this week that Von Raab's wife, who was a loans manager at First American Bank Shares, the Clifford firm, was let go by Robert Altman. So maybe that's really what started the scandal, was that they fired his wife. But regardless of how it breaks, this is part of a long pattern of banking for covert operation interests. Several books that I think you should get if you don't have them or haven't read them are Hot Money by R.T. Naylor from up here in Canada, In Banks We Trust by Penny Lernoux, and Inside Job by three individuals who did down in the States who did extensive work on the S&L scandals and their links. The CIA has had banks do its dirty work for a long time. Paul Hellawell, one of the early OSS and CIA operatives in Southeast Asia, set up in the Bahamas the Castle Bank and Trust. I mentioned the Nugenhan Bank. There's many other banks that have served both for mafia and CIA purposes to do this kind of money laundering. And some of them, of course, as you may know, involve the Bush family.